Dead.
I think you ought to know that men's radio, the place where men and women really speak. Oh man, what a show! It's men's radio. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. And radio, that's the place for you. With Russ Kane and Phil Dave.
Welcome to the peak of the week. Oh, look who's in first. Good heavens. It's my mother who says, well, hello, boy.
Well, hello, Linda. That was my best Leslie Phillips. Ding dong.
Right. Russ,
is it very... hang on. Lovely Demeter. Russ, is it very cold in your house, or is the scarf doing sport as a result of what doing? A, it's quite nippy. B, I'm not feeling 100%. So I just thought I'd warm myself up, if you know what I mean.
Very good afternoon, Barry J. Allen.
Hey, Barry J. Allen. I'll read the other things. I'll tell you what happened yesterday. We've got a packed show, but I've just got a little bit of goss. Martin Allen, happy Wednesday. Ed Grossman, do-wah. So yesterday, dog walk, beautiful day. Like today is revolting. It's kind of piddly with rain and it's really quite cold and everything like that. Do I want to cuddle? Lovely. Be around in 20 minutes. Phil, you have the show. Bye, everybody.
I have to wait a little while before the cuddle can happen.
I don't care. I'm throwing caution to the wind. It's lovely Demeter. Who cares? Anywho, and then I can pop around to my cousin Francine for a snack. So it all works out quite well. Know what I mean? Romance and food. That's all you need. Anywho, so yesterday, 2 things happened. There's a new thing with cyclists. I'm not going to go on. And they're wearing headphones, right? Like Phil is now. But they've got boom boxes. Like we need more noise pollution. One guy stopped at a bench. The music was nightclub loud. I'm not kidding. Nightclub loud. And it's belting over a reservoir. And you walk past him, you're like, what the, I mean, it's just so selfish. But I was thinking of Barry J. Allen, because another guy comes by and he's playing Queen, which was better than the crap the other guy was playing. And he's playing, and I was so furious. I just started singing at him at the top of my voice. The track was "We Are the Champions" as he's cycling along, because we need to hear him. He couldn't think of just putting earphones in. He's got to let everybody and the whole neighborhood know. What a arse. Do the rest of us Uber read this for Paul Rose? Would you be so kind, Philip?
Do the rest of us Uber nerds get the same reaction when you play the Flash Gordon theme when you're talking about the Flash? Just me. Carry on.
No. We all love it. It's too much. You cannot resist somebody called Barry Allen, which, if you don't know, if you haven't got the gag by now over the months, is the name of the character, the Flash. His name in real life, well, in the DC universe life, is the Flash. So that's why Phil came up with that little bit from Flash Gordon with Sam Jones and all the rest of it.
By the way, just in case you are listening to this and you're thinking, what the devil am I listening to? You're listening.
Yes, please.
You're listening to The Daily Show here on Men's Radio Station with him, Russ Kane, who seems to be smoking a pen, not that we advocate smoking of pens, and me, Phil Dave. We are live with you until 1 o'clock today, live across Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as Deluxe Radio and Radio Waves. Oh, and mensradiostation.com, and of course the Men's Radio Station app, which you, yes, you, can download right now in your chosen app store. Go for it. What have you got to lose? It's perfectly free, and you get to hear us as often as you like. Of course.
We're giving that app away free. Can't believe it. Can't believe it.
Sorry, the accountant said it was okay.
Unbelievable. Seems to be a little bit of confusion going on here. Lovely Demisa, romance. It's perfect that you think that's what's on offer. What do you think she means? You're a man of the world, Phil. What do you think?
I will leave you two to guess that for yourselves, because to be perfectly frank, I'm not sure I want to know.
Well, I want to know. I got to know. We've got a massive show lined up. Normally, it's you and me and Phil, and we all have a good old natter, and it's lovely. But there were two things that came up that which I thought we'd incorporate into today's show. We don't normally have guests on Mondays and Wednesdays, but I thought today, hey, let's mix it up because the world's gone mad. And
don't get me started on what I think the world's gone nuts.
No, I can't take. It's actually made me ill.
It's
I'm
very
quite
strange.
happy to confess it. I've actually made me ill. What is a man of the world, says Ed Grossman? Well, look at Phil Dave. The picture of sartorial elegance, suave, sophisticated. That's what a man of the Paul Claridge. Russ, why don't you get a bike and ride around belting the push bike? No, I actually turned to my dog walk companion of yesterday and said, I'm going to get a bike, the biggest boom box I can find, and just play the Archers at ear bleeding level.
Oh, that would be sensational. Can you imagine? Ross,
That'd be great.
I think the only way you could do that, though, is if you were driving along on a penny farthing.
I'm worried about Jim. Oh, that's the wrong one. Paul Rose, no. Martin Allen, no. That's what I'm going to say about that.
Look, we're not going to get into the whole Meghan Markle thing today. I do think, by the way,
not getting into it, but it's something I do want to say. But let Phil say what he's going to say.
Yeah, I do think, by the way, that sort of from my part, and I know Ross will have something to say on this as well, that I would like to sort of clarify something from the other day, which may have come across in a rather unclear manner, for which I humbly apologise for my part in it. With Meghan Markle, if she feels that she has mental health issues, then there is no doubt in my mind and anyone's mind that she must get that dealt with, and she absolutely deserves support offered to her. What I don't like personally, and I stand by this, is using mental health as a weapon to score points. And I'm sorry, but that's just sort of something that I feel very uncomfortable with. As far as I'm concerned, I hope that she has now got the help she needs, and I would like to think, bearing in mind that both she and her husband are massive advocates for mental health and are in contact with some of the biggest charities working in this industry, in this field, I would very much like to think that they have access, possibly that the most of us don't, frankly, because of all of the pushing and the advocating for mental health that they do. And as a result of it, obviously, I hope she's given the treatment that she needs, if indeed she does need it.
The only thing I'm going to say on this is we will have an expert. Had a very long conversation with one of the first people to come on board on Men's Radio Station, the excellent Noel McDermott. I'm hoping Noel will find time on Friday to come on and talk about this. But Noel's main area is suicide prevention, which really is one of the platforms on which we've built and one of the aims and objectives of Men's Radio Station. So the key thing to come out of all of this, and this is my only reference to it, is if you do feel, or you know people who do feel, or indicating any suicidal tendencies whatsoever, please get professional help. It's professional help that you require. It is out there. If it's a member of your family, God forbid, or a friend or somebody, you can reach out to us on Men's Radio Station, and we will put you in touch with or direct you towards experts. Just to be clear, we never give advice. We have opinions. That is, everyone's entitled to opinion. We're not medical experts. Phil and I would never give advice. The only people who give advice on men's radio or women's radio are those people who are fully qualified to do so. Phil and I are totally entitled as human beings to have an opinion, just like everybody watching and listening to this show all over the world has an opinion. That's a basic right. Whether we agree with it, whether you agree with us, it doesn't matter. It's your right to have an opinion.
Now,
we don't give medical advice. But if you know anybody who is feeling suicidal or you think is having mental difficulties, get professional advice. That's the important message for today.
And of course, the Samaritans are always available here in the UK. 116123 is the telephone number for Samaritans. That's on screen now if you are watching along.
Now, the only reason we're going to make something a bit different, I'm not going to read out all these comments, and I'll tell you why. I just don't. I'm out of it. I just can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I don't want to.
The comments are there. You can read them. We're not going to censor them. We're not going to put blue lines through them. Ain't going to happen. They're there. They're your opinions.
Perfect.
I've got my opinion. Phil's got his.
Let us tell you what is coming up on today's program, because you'll be delighted to hear we're not talking about them. In fact, that's the last mention of them. At 12:15 today, we're going to be joined by Ryan Neal. Now, Ryan is head of behaviour at the Blue Cross, which is going to be a very interesting subject indeed. Now, you're probably thinking, just hang on a second, a mental health charity? Why are you talking about the Red Cross? Well, what the Red Cross? The Blue Cross. The Red Cross is very different.
Blue Cross. That's prejudice right there.
We'll take two. Right, using.
All right, thank God it's on a live show. And over to now Phil, who's going to introduce one of the big items. Phil, what have we got coming up?
Well, I'm very pleased you asked that, Russell, because today we're going to be speaking at about 12:15 to Ryan Neal, who's head of behaviour at the Blue Cross. Now, you're probably
thinking it was the Red Cross.
Why? Shut it. Why are you thinking to yourself? I hear you ask. Why are we speaking to someone from the Blue Cross? Of course, they are to do with animals. But
yes.
A very, very interesting report that suggests that some of the programs that we see on television that are geared towards our four-legged chums are actually teaching us really bad habits when it comes to our four-legged friends. So what Ryan's going to do is he's going to highlight some of those potential issues, and they're also going to tell us what we should be doing. And also, let's be honest, as things hopefully start to get back to some semblance of normality again, whatever the heck that looks like, a lot of people have taken up ownership of dogs during this time for company. And when those dogs have never been left alone, what happens next? So we'll be absolutely looking into that as well. And then at 12:45, we'll be speaking, at 12:45, 12:45, we will be speaking to Doug Russell. Now, Doug Russell is going to be talking about, I think, the most shocking story we've seen in a long time.
It's a big story. It's why I wanted him on. Big story, this.
I just don't like the thought of this. Bearing in mind, there have been people who have been classed as key workers throughout this pandemic, and they come in many forms, by the way. It's not just necessarily those who work in healthcare. Of course, they are absolutely the key workers, but key workers come in all sorts, whether it be the health workers, social workers, whether it be carers, or possibly even some people you don't think about. I know this might sound ridiculous, but technically speaking, Russ and I are classed as key workers because we're an information service. On other platforms we work on, when you work in broadcasting and media, that is classed as a key service. But also what's classed as key is shop workers.
Yep.
And shop workers have seen a considerable rise in abuse towards them. And honestly, I think that's horrific.
It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. That's what it is. This was sparked. This is the thing. We're going to have another guest. He might phone in today if we have time. He might. But we're going to have him as a guest as well. It's somebody who's got an establishment and has been bullied. Now, I cannot stand any form of bullying. Phil's even hotter on it than I am, but I have zero tolerance for bullying. And what's happened to this fellow? And he sent me, we've had a lot of emails, he and I, and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, this is just disgusting. So we'll probably get him on the show. But as a precursor to that, it's completely unacceptable. What's the matter with people? Seriously, what the hell's the matter with people? Could you do me a favour, young Philip? Young Philip. Could you put up Paul Andrews' thing, the email for Samaritans? Would you be so kind?
When you refer to me as young Philip, it makes me feel
you're younger than two of my kids. So if you don't feel able to talk, you can email the Samaritans. It's joe@samaritans.org. I think that Phil's parents are actually hoping I'm going to adopt him. But I've got Ray, Linda. It's not going to happen. I'm really sorry.
By the way, whilst we're waiting for our first guest to connect, I have to say, I'm sure this will fascinate people. He's not connected yet, by the way. But whilst we're waiting for our first guest to connect, I have to tell you that a little parcel arrived this morning. And to which I need to say a huge thank you to a friend of mine, Mr. Russ Kane. Now, Russell is a very funny sort of chap. For some reason, I think he has some sort of guilt, the fact that I do this out of the some might say the goodness of my heart. You've got to find the heart first. But some might say out of the goodness of my heart. And to which I do try and explain from time to time that it is an absolute pleasure. But I should point out, I should point out that Russ insist on sort of showing these little acts of thanks, and more often than not it comes in the form of a bottle of whiskey, which is terribly kind because he knows that clearly I have some sort of issue. Well, I've got one heck of a reputation, I can tell you. The amount of whiskey I got over Christmas, New Year, I can't go there. But anyway, let's not dwell on that. But the point is, this morning it was a nice little change because in the post arrived a packet of poachies. Now I hear you. What the heck is a poachie?
What is a poachie?
I tell you what, I'm not going to say just yet what it is, but hazard a guess.
Change your life.
Hazard a guess if you can tell me, and indeed Ross, what a poachie is.
Well, I kind of know what it is because I sent them to you. I've been using them for ages. They were recommended to me, and they're damn good.
Oh.
Crazy name, crazy cow, Phantom. It's a new picture. It's a new picture. Put the picture back up. My eyesight's so shit at the moment. Yeah. Nice. Okay. There we go. Russ, says Ed Grossman, private roads get adopted. Is that what you mean? Phil Dave Way. Avenue de Fil. Ramsey, what have I missed? Just joined. Work intruded on my MRS time. Well, tell them that's not acceptable. Send my regards to Michael Crawford. Where are we going with that? Stephen, even for you, that is obscure. Send my regards to Michael Crawford. What does that mean, Phil? You're clever.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I hope he's okay. Is Michael Crawford unwell?
No, I think he's in rude health. I think he's fine. And I don't know him. But there we go. Well, I mean, I know him. I mean, but I don't know him personally. I can't. Michael, he'll always be that to me. It's always be that. I had lunch with Michelle Detrice. Larry Viner and I took Michelle and Karen Detrice out for lunch some time ago. And the whole of the lunch, I was dying to go, who's going to see the Queen on Christmas Day then? Yeah, it was killing me not to do it. Okay, just me then. Oh, reply to Phantom of the Opera.
I bet he's never heard it.
Oh, I've got it. Stephen, that is such an obscure reference. Phantom, give my regards to Michael Crawford, Phantom of the Opera. He was the first Phantom. Got it. Wow, Stephen.
Well, I'm very pleased we don't have anyone listening called Dolly and we say hello, Dolly, because then, of course, he was in that as well. But anyway.
Haven't you got like an aunt? You must have an aunt called Dolly. Haven't you got an aunt called Dolly or something? Must have one tucked away. Everyone's got an aunt called Dolly somewhere. I don't.
I tell you who I did know. No, I tell you who I did know called Dolly. There's a cafe that's quite near to where we are in Stanmore called Cartons. And the reason why
was it called?
Cartons, as in drinks cartons, it has been there for decades. I mean, I remember going there as a diddy child. I mean, I'm not exactly tall, but you know what I mean. When I was really, really young, we used to go there as tradition every weekend for a spot of lunch as a family. And one of the people who worked there was called Dolly. She was this lovely elderly lady. I'd be very, very surprised if she's still with us, because I don't mean to be rude. She was really old when I was young. But she was a lovely old lady who sort of worked behind the counter serving pastries to people. And she was sort of like the waitresses you get in the penny dresses and stuff like that. And she was just
soups.
It wasn't quite that.
Soups.
Two soups.
The best sketch. I love that sketch.
Wasn't quite as bad as Julie Walters as portrayed in that. And actually, what is the name of that sketch? Because I know it's not Two Soups. I'm just trying to think what it's called. Soups. I don't think it was. I think that was a real misconception, but I know it was about Two Soups. So I'm trying to think what it was called.
Everyone's doing Dolly stuff. Paul Claridge, my mate Martin, is an English Bull Terrier called Dolly. Good to know.
Ed Grossman, is Stammer still there? Well, arguably not how I remember it, but Stammer is
ever so posh. Linda Dave, Dolly the sheep. That's right, the first sheep to be cloned. And Chrissy Holt. No, you've lost me here. This is a type of washing machine, I am guessing. A dolly tub for washing.
Here I'm off to sunny Spain. Hey, viva España.
I'm absolutely exhausted now. What is the dolly tub? I don't know what a dolly tub is. No idea.
I don't know. Oh, you see, lovely Demise is with me. Carton's owned by Ben. Absolutely, Ben's the owner. Still fabulous. No, Dolly isn't there now. All young women staff. Everyone in there always looks after my mum. Oh, look at that. Lovely Demise. And that's great.
And for Sir, the soup. I've only got to think of that sketch.
It was.
It's such a beautiful setup. This very middle-class family. We've just got time. They've got to catch a train or something. So they go into the restaurant. Julie Walters. Oh, it's fantastic. Phil, Sam Moore is like Liverpool, both at the end of the line. Richard Todd, thank you for this. Two Soups was actually called The Waitress.
Thank you. You see, like I said, I did think it wasn't. I didn't know it wasn't called Two Soups. I just couldn't remember what it was called. But The Waitress, of course, it is called that. Which is strange, actually, when you think about it, because it would have made much more sense to call it Two Soups.
Well, people write stuff and do stuff, and they never realize that some of this is immortal. And the longevity, they just probably write it as a sketch and think it's pretty good. But, no one, when you're doing this stuff, thinks that the longevity it's going to have. I'm sure that John Cleese and Connie Booth didn't think that with the 12 episodes they wrote of Fawlty Towers, which is still as fantastic now as it was when it came out. Any sign of Guestorama?
Or was it 13 episodes? There was this long rumor going around that apparently they'd sort of written an extra episode that never got transmitted. John Cleese always says there's a load of nonsense, but I wonder. I don't know. No, if there was a sign of guests, the guest would be with us.
Precisely so.
But luckily, I've texted the right people. I'm sure this is fascinating, by the way.
Richard Todd, calling The Waitress, Two Soups, The Waitress, it's like calling the Four Candles, The Shopkeeper, the greatest, in my humble opinion, the greatest television sketch of all time. Four Candles. Just sublime. I don't even know how
I have to tell you, I do think they did rather a good job. When, sadly, Ronnie Barker had died and Ronnie Corbett was still with us, was another sketch that they did in celebration of Four Candles, which they sort of created with
Harry Enfield.
Of course, it was Harry Enfield. Thank you very much. Yes, with Harry Enfield and Ronnie Corbett. And what they brought it up to date, where they started using references from this day and age. So, for example, that they said things such as, for example, my BlackBerry, and they literally took a little BlackBerry rather than the phone. My BlackBerry is frozen, and they'd taken it out of the freezer.
Well, it was just great.
And then it was things such as like, is it on orange? And he put it on top of an orange.
Yeah, it was
really, really clever modern reference stuff like that.
I'm going to reboot it, and he kicks the crap out of it. It's a wonderful sketch. Describing it doesn't do it full justice. Look it up on YouTube. It's Harry Enfield and Ronnie Corbett. In that sketch, just look it up. It's very interesting. There's certain people who are completely my heroes. The two Ronnies were absolutely my heroes, etc. Ray Galton, the scriptwriter, and I've never met these people, but I've become sort of online friends with their kids. I say their kids; they're probably middle-aged by now, but it's such Richard Bryars' daughter. Lucy Bryce, Ray Galton's daughter, the Hancock scriptwriter, that's Sarah Galton. All these people, I always wonder what it must be. I wanted to do a whole series about what it would be like growing up as the child of somebody who's enormously famous. Is it a burden? Is it a blessing? Phil's managed.
I've got by in life. Right.
You've got by.
Speaking of get by in life, we need to go all serious now for a moment, Russell.
Yeah, I'm afraid we do.
Joining us now on Men's Radio Station, The Daily Show, with him, Russ Kane, and with me, Phil Dave, live across Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, mensradiostation.com, the app, and of course, Radio Waves and Deluxe Radio.
Yeah. Leslie, don't go to the opticians. Wait. It's going to be an interesting show.
Thank you very much. Is Ryan Neal? I assume that's right. Is it now, Ryan? Are you going to tell me that it's Ryan Neal or not Ryan Neely?
You're correct.
I got it right. Hurrah!
Right, yeah. Every now and then I get called Neely, but it's Neil.
Right. Do you know what? You've been greedy and you've taken an extra E unnecessarily, but all the same. But
you're allowed to say that.
Ryan Neal is. Thank you very much.
Just a Northern Soul going down there. A bit of Northern Soul.
Just to clarify, I absolutely meant the vowel as opposed to any illegal activities. Thank you very much.
I think Ryan's got the point.
Ryan Neal, who's head of behaviour. Right, move on, Kane. Move on. Head of behaviour at the Blue Cross. Now, Ryan, you're actually here to talk about a relatively serious subject that I have to confess that, as a dog owner, didn't even cross my mind. Never mind what some people who are maybe new to owning dogs might think. This is with reference to some of the televisual feasts that we have to, I'm going to say, tolerate, if I'm being polite, in this day and age, in which they might be teaching us sort of bad habits as far as our dogs are concerned. Please do tell.
Yes, so it's really a concern that we have that's come from the various lockdowns we've had recently, where we've seen a massive rise in people bringing dogs into their homes. And of course, that's a really exciting time for people. And dogs are just more than pets. They're like our family members. But I think thanks to some TV programs that are now being popularized on UK TV and Netflix, they're using very outdated methods that really aren't effective and actually put your relationship with your pet at risk, because the methods that are used, a lot of aversive training or punishment-based training, can cause fear and anxiety and in some cases pain to dogs. And of course, that's a real concern for us, because the long-term consequences of that are often that the problems can get worse. And maybe even put your relationship at risk to the point where dogs are needed to be rehomed. And at Blue Cross, I see the outcome of this. I see lots of dogs that are fearful and worried because of the training they've had, and it takes a lot to rehabilitate them back into wonderful, loving homes. So I want to be proactive and speak out now and hopefully give your listeners an alternative to the temptation of following the advice of people that are on their television screens at the moment.
That's very interesting. Now, one of the things that Phil and I have been discussing for months, actually, Phil's got 2 dogs, I've got a dog, they are the centre of our universe, that's all there is to it, is that eventually, please God I live this long, lockdown and everything else will go away, and we will start to go what we used to call out again.
Yeah.
And because all our dogs are so used to having us around, and quite literally 24/7, unless I go to brush my teeth or something, she's always next to me. What do you think is going to happen? But then we get back to your main subject, but we're very curious. What do you think is going to happen when people go back to what was termed laughingly normal life? Yes.
And this is really something that people should be thinking about now when things are going to be happening soon. We still have time to prepare our dogs to go back to a rhythm of normality and a routine that will be very similar to when we start to go back to the office, if indeed that's what we do. Because I think there's going to be some real changes to the way that we work here. But things like, if you wear a uniform to work, then you probably haven't put that on for ages. So there's lots of little cues that our dogs won't be having now that are telling them about what's in store for them. But you're right, a lot of dogs aren't being left alone, and they will need easing into that. I suspect that there are certain dogs that are predisposed to having separation-related behaviours, and no doubt that will be something that might be triggered again when people go back. But there are lots of dogs that get by not having their owners around, and no doubt for some that will be a bit of respite for them too, because we're all kind of in a bit of a pressure cooker at the moment, because we're just locked in, can't go out, and sometimes that's a good and bad thing. But I would think about what is that routine? Could we be going out and leaving the dog behind for a period of time so that they do get used to being by themselves again, and support them in learning that that's okay by giving them something to entertain them, something to chew, giving them some cues that help them to sort of relax and switch off.
And of course, the other problem as well is that sort of if it is a case of you go out for a whole day at work, then you certainly don't want to just jump straight back into leaving a dog for however many hours you have to leave it for, because my understanding is that if you are going to reintroduce that to somebody, you should really step out of the house for even as little as 5-10 minutes, just so they know you are coming back. And if you don't do that on a daily basis, until in the run up to when you do have to go back to leaving them for a number of hours at a time, then one can only begin to dread what the consequences are going to be.
Yes, and dogs are they're just as individuals as us. So no two dogs are the same. And obviously, if you're spending all of your time at home with your dog on your lap and you're cuddling them, and you have this really intense relationship, then yeah, there's going to be a real contrast to you being there cuddling them to you not being there. Whereas other dogs, they might not have that intense relationship, and you going out might be something that they cope with admirably or really, really well. So I would urge people to think about their individual dogs. And it's hard when they're family members because, sometimes our hearts rule our head, but be objective and think, okay, what I need to forward plan here. And as you say, incrementally start to ease them back into a routine that's going to be resembling the new normal, whatever that looks like. But anybody listening that's worried or has questions, come to the Blue Cross website, because we have so much amazing information that will steer established dog owners or new dog owners in the right direction and give them the right steer, as opposed to them watching TV and copying some of the techniques that are being shown at the moment.
Are you worried for how much? Sorry, Ross. I was just going to say, are you worried about the number of dogs that may sort of, how can I put it? When people go back to their regular routines, are the Blue Cross worried for the number of dogs that might suddenly not miraculously fit into that new routine or old routine going back to work? Sorry.
Yes. I mean, Blue Cross, for those of you who don't know Blue Cross, and hopefully you all do, but it's a wonderful charity that really helps to care for sick and injured animals, but also the people that own the animals and are really interested in helping them have successful relationships. So proactive advice is always better than reactive. So we would hope that people have done their homework and have really picked a dog that's suitable for their lifestyle. But things aren't always straightforward, and some problems which people think are insurmountable are actually achievable with the right approach, with an evidence-based approach, and reward-based training. So I would don't worry, don't go to the wrong sources. Come to places like Blue Cross. There's also an amazing charity called the ABTC, which is the Animal Behavior Training Council, and they do all the hard work for you. If you contact them, they will link you up with an ethical, reward-based trainer that will steer you on the right track.
Do you think this is? I'm so glad you're on. And when I saw we had the opportunity, I grabbed it. So something else that Phil and I have chatted about a lot over the months is: do you think that our pets, including cats, but we're talking about dogs mainly, that our dogs pick up on the changes that have happened to us over the past 12 months?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's really hard for us to know really what dogs are thinking, because we can't ask them, we can't talk to them. But what we can do is understand their behavior, their body language. And I work with lots of people that have noticed a difference in their dog's behavior, and probably in response to a change in ours. And we're not going out as much. We're not putting smart clothes on to go to the office. We're a lot more sedentary. We're not getting out. And so I think that some really perceptive dogs will be tuning in to that. Whereas others are just thinking this is like some extended holiday period, and it's a great time because everyone's around to play with me.
Yeah, they must be. It must be like Christmas Day. It must be like Christmas Day. But I was just, wondering, because people have got, there's no two ways about it. People have got anxious. People have got nervous. The level of fear has exponentially risen. And I'm sure dogs pick up on this. I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
They're very sensitive, aren't they?
Yeah. But also, they have an incredible sense of smell. So they will detect sort of changes in the way that we smell. When our emotions change. So if you think about dogs that detect cancer or seizure alert dogs, all we do is we cue them into the minute, small changes that are almost imperceptible to us, and we reward them for that, and they become these incredible dogs that do this incredible job for us. So yes, I think that they will cue into subtle changes that we're not aware of. And maybe behave differently as a result.
Now, one other thing, I know we've limited time today, but don't name the show. Don't name the show, Ryan. But what sort of stuff have you seen on TV? Because I watch we watch all that stuff, right? We love it. And the dog always sits there attentively watching the screen as they're talking to us. It's extraordinary. But what sort of stuff are they peddling or suggesting on TV that you professionally feel would be a mistake?
Yes. Okay. So I'm seeing rolled up newspapers. I'm seeing intimidation, and I'm seeing sort of forceful correction. So when I'm working with people, I always say, okay, how would this feel for you if you had a boss that told you off quite forcefully for all the mistakes that you make in a day? What would that do to you? Would that make you feel confident? That make you feel good about yourself? And whereas if you had a boss that acknowledged, treated you with dignity and respect and rewarded you for all the great things that you did, what boss would you rather have? And if I'm helping dog owners, I want them to be the sort of owners that are going to grow trust and increase confidence in their dogs. So rather than intimidate them or suppress their behavior. So let's say I yanked you on a chain every time you
went to Old Compton Street? No.
Yeah. You would shut down and stop showing me
just a bit, Ryan. Yeah, horrible.
Yeah, but the question is, have I solved the problem for you? Have I helped you to overcome a fear, or have I just told you to shut up? And that's my real problem here, is that these programs are made to look really appealing, and the presenters are quite charismatic, and it's made to look like a quick fix, but it isn't. And I know this because I've been doing my job for over 30 years, and I know what real behavior change requires.
But you see, this is the danger of TV, is that everything looks easy, and everything, you've used the absolute apt phrase, Ryan. It's a quick fix. You can do it because we've got a half hour, 45-minute show. So this is how you train a dog. Boom, it's all done with this family. Let's go on to the next family. And life and reality isn't like that, but it would make boring television. So they've got to squeeze it all in. It gives us an unrealistic view of what is achievable in what amount of time. Yeah. That's why people get frustrated, I think.
Yes, and I want to, I'm calling out to all of the really talented reward-based trainers to get themselves an agent, get on telly, because there's a gap in the market where we could truly reach all the dog owners out there that need that kind of help, to be inspired by someone that's at the other end of the spectrum, that uses positive reinforcement, reward-based training to really show us how we can repay dogs for all of the amazing things they bring to our lives. Let's pay them back by treating them with the right kind of training that doesn't hurt them or make them more frightened, but gives them confidence and increases their trust in us.
Ryan,
ask a very quick question?
Yeah.
Is I've always believed, and I think Phil does as well, that there's no such thing as a bad dog. It's just a bad owner. Would you, as a professional, think that's true?
Yeah, I think that I mean, that's such a great phrase, but I just think that what we're dealing with here is two separate species. You know, we've got, in the human world, you know, we have language, and then we can communicate with each other using that language, and then we use the same language to a different species. So we have to do more to help them to understand the world that we've brought them into. We've bred them to be this way, to be these different shapes and sizes, and to want to do various things like herd sheep or guard livestock. So we have to cut them slack and do more to help them understand the human world. And I think that's a wonderful journey to take with the dog. Is you know, they can't go to the library, they can't Google human behavior, but we can learn about theirs, and that's our end of the bargain. Is let's help them to live in our world and do that in a way that doesn't cause them pain or fear or mistrust in us.
And don't you find it so sad that one even has to say that in this day and age? But Ryan Neal, Head of Behaviour at Blue Cross, thank you very much indeed.
Oh, thank you very much indeed. Been great.
To us on Men's Radio Station today. Really do appreciate it. Do you know, it's... I don't understand something, right? Now, I'm not innocent. I'm not perfect. When it comes to...
Do you want to vote on that?
No, but when it comes to training animals and when it comes to their behavior or what have you, I'm not going to pretend to be some amazing dog trainer, because I know how badly behaved by and large my dogs are. You know, they're very disobedient. Don't get me wrong. They behave in terms of not in the least bit aggressive. Occasionally they snap at each other, but certainly not another human. They wouldn't. And I just think, okay, there's room for improvement. But all the time that I think that, not once do I get that angry with them that I would do some of the things that some people clearly do to their pets. And I don't understand it.
Because they're horrible people. They're horrible, nasty, twisted bullies. And they take it out on anything. They're disgusting. They're disgusting human beings. That's what they are. They're screwed up. They need help. They'll never bother to get it, but they do. I don't understand it. You know, maltreating animals is the lowest. Just so despicably low. It just makes my blood boil, along with nearly everything else these days. Oh, Monty, this is from Linda Dave, no relation, obviously. Please, Phil, can you mention about Monty being blind and he's crying? Oh, God. Sam Monroe, good news. Ziggy is paying special attention to these little dogs. I love, yeah. And Jane Keller says, ask Russ, Ed. I think Ebony is already in charge. Ebony runs the entire world. I am just her factotum. Unlike the Paul Burrell to the mini schnauzer, who just does what the hell that's what she wants, really.
Sam Monroe says, I love my Ziggy. Well, Ziggy, we're not surprised, because if you are watching this, by the way, as opposed to listening, well, frankly, everyone else is about to see precisely why you, quote, love your Ziggy. Because, oh, look, here's Ziggy listening to Men's Radio Station.
Oh, for God's sake, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
And so those of you who are listening, by the way,
very messy desk. He's got a messy desk, isn't it? Very messy.
Have a photo of Ben's dog Ziggy, who is sitting in
sweet little dog,
having a listen.
Sweet little dog, except when it tries to drown itself in a canal.
Yeah, that's not.
Anywho, God.
Now, I'm delighted to report that our next guest is waiting in the digital green room.
Cool.
However, However, we currently can't see our next guest. This is not terribly interesting for those on air, but regrettably, that's the beauty of live radio. There he is. Look at that. Thumbs up and everything. Marvelous stuff. So in that case, I would say that it's now time for us to welcome to Men's Radio Station Doug Russell. Now, Doug is from the organization, the USDAW. Good gracious me.
Beautifully done. Do you want to do that again?
No, I don't. You've got too many initials in your organization.
There's a couple ones. There's a couple in the alphabet you didn't put in there.
The rest of the alphabet. Doug, you're here to talk about a very serious subject. So thank you very much indeed for speaking to us on Men's Radio Station. We really appreciate it and welcome.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Now, as I mentioned, it is a serious subject because it's about the rise. I can't believe I have to say this. What country are we living in, for crying out loud? It's about the rise in abuse towards shopkeepers. I don't think they'd put it like this on BBC Radio 4, but I'm going to. What the hell? What's gone wrong?
Well, there already was a serious problem with violence and abuse towards shop workers before the pandemic occurred. And that probably been getting worse. In the years 2018, 2019, we saw a massive rise in levels of violence, but most of that was linked to dealing with shoplifters and selling age-restricted products where you had to ask someone for proof of age. And they were recognised flashpoints that could trigger abuse from some individuals. What's really shocking is we did a survey it's the Union of Shop Distributive and Allied Workers, by the way, Phil, just to explain. We're organised mainly in retail. Our biggest retail members work in the supermarket chains and in the co-op, in those shops that have stayed open throughout the pandemic and have kept providing the essential grocery services that people need. And we conducted a survey of about 3,000 shop workers at the end of 2020 to find out what effect the pandemic had on the levels of violence and abuse. And we're shocked to find that they'd more than doubled over the last year. Something like 90% of the workers we spoke to said that they'd had verbal abuse at least once in the last 12 months. 2/3 of them said they'd been threatened with physical violence. And 9%, that's 1 in 10 shop workers, had actually been physically attacked in the last year since the pandemic started.
We take into account, Doug, that people are extra tense and all the rest. We get that, but it is inexcusable. There is no reason to resort to violence. They're doing you a service. You're going to a shop. It's an interaction. I think
that's right, Russ. I think they clearly there are some people who are frightened and scared, understandably, by the virus, and don't look forward to having to go out to shop or to public places and putting themselves at risk. But the shops need to be open. People need to be able to buy the stuff that's there. The workers need to be there to provide that essential service. And it's not the workers' fault that there are systems in place. And what was shocking was it was the very systems that have been put in place to protect the public and to protect the staff in stores that are now the main triggers for that abuse. So it's things like having to make people queue outside the shop to stop the numbers from building up inside the shop, or reminding people to remain physically distanced from each other when they're in the store, or reminding them to wear face coverings when they're in the store. They're actually the triggers now for a lot of that violence and abuse. From a small minority, it has to be said, the vast majority of the public have coped pretty well with it and are quite supportive of the shop workers and appreciate the service they provide. But there's a significant minority who are causing problems.
See, you used a very interesting phrase, Doug, which was the flashpoint. One of the obvious things, you can tell us much more about this, but one of the obvious things was, people they rock up to some shop and you're meant to be wearing a mask and they're refusing to wear a mask. And then you've got the situation where the shop worker has to say, well, I'm sorry, you can't come in, Mr. Russell. And Mr. Russell says, well, I'm blooming well coming in to get my kitchen roll or whatever the hell it is. And that's obviously going to be a conflict. Did you think there was a way around this?
Well, the way around it is for people to actually exercise some common sense and think about the situation that we're facing with.
We've fallen at the first fence, haven't we?
Sorry about that. If you've got a genuine medical reason for not being able to wear a mask, and that might be a psychological, and you may not have an obvious disability, so you can't assume just because you can't wear a mask that this could be obvious to the shop worker, and that is one of the problems with enforcing that particular set of laws. But if it's somebody who quite clearly should be wearing a mask and is refusing to do so because they're on their high horse about some kind of civil right that they've got, and they want to put other people at risk, then that clearly is unacceptable behaviour, and it needs to be dealt with as unacceptable behaviour.
Yes, of course, the biggest problem is, though, that caveats don't really help the matter. So, yes, you're absolutely right. Of course, if there is some genuine reason that someone can't wear a mask, well, then that's fine. But I suppose we don't really need to get into that too much. Now, more importantly, from a shop worker's perspective, have you found that any of your members have they sort of said anything about fearing about going to work? Has it changed?
Yes, very much so. 8 out of 10 of the workers we talked to in that survey said that things had definitely got worse since the pandemic started. And if you think about it, if 90% of the shop workers have been verbally abused, sometimes on a weekly or a daily basis, the mental toll that takes on you. I mean, it's bad enough that you have to be in a public place serving millions of people every day, exposed to the virus yourself and worried about whether or not you're going to get it or take it home to your loved ones at home. But if on top of that, you're frightened that whenever somebody kicks off, you're never quite sure whether they're just going to give you a mouthful or whether it's going to get more physical than that. It's a very stressful situation to be in.
That's why I was so keen and delighted to have you on Men's Radio Station, Doug, because what you're saying touches on two of our keystones. And one is bullying, which is always unacceptable. The other is violence, of course, which is always unacceptable. And the other thing is the mental stress and the whole mental aspect of this, which people have not always taken on board. And I'm very glad you're underlining. It's so important. You know, they're people. They're people. Yeah. They're human beings.
They're very much so. And I think that's the biggest problem with violence and abuse towards shop staff as it's grown over the years is that mental toll it's had on the workers. Obviously, there are a smaller number who actually are physically attacked, sometimes in quite violent ways, and that's totally unacceptable. But even if you're not physically attacked, to be abused on a regular basis on grounds of your sex or your perceived sexual orientation or your gender or your race is actually a hate crime, and it shouldn't be permitted.
It's like it's like the gates were opened, and this sort of behaviour. You know, if it becomes the norm, then we've all got a major problem. Got a major problem on our hands. The supermarkets are kind of luckier because they can at least put security guards, whatever you might want to call them, you know, between the actual shop staff and the public. But the Ma and Pa stores on the corner can't do that, can they? Are they the ones who are affected the most?
Small convenience stores are probably the ones who've been hardest hit by violence all the way through. Yeah. The main violence in the past was from shoplifters, as I say, in age-restricted products, and obviously small convenience stores are a target for shop theft, and there are also places that sell those kind of age-restricted products like alcohol and cigarettes and things like that, so they're a target for that as well. And you're right, they've got less resource to actually deal with the situation. But I think what's interesting about the pandemic is that it has been across the board. It is even in the bigger supermarkets that we're finding incidents kicking off and people being aggressive in ways that perhaps they wouldn't have been in the past.
It's it's interesting. You're resonating hard with our listeners and viewers. Melanie Hutchins says, it makes me sad to think we even have to talk about this. Every respect for shop workers. And I think that goes without saying. That's a unilateral feel. And, you know, it's Paul Claridge, who's always in the sharp end of these things, Doug. He says, sadly, I'm not shocked to hear about the abuse shop workers are subjected to by members of the public. I myself are regularly threatened, abused, and occasionally assaulted. And you know what he does? He's handing out free newspapers.
Good God.
That's what Paul does.
Yeah.
And he gets beaten up. I mean, literally beaten up. I don't understand it. What sort of steps, Doug, can be done?
Well, we're working closely with the employers, obviously, to try and do what we can to control to protect workers from within. Employers have a duty to protect the health and safety of the workers so far as they can. And so you're right, there's been more evidence of, for example, uniformed security guards on the doors in the bigger stores to try and control numbers. There's been more training and support for staff. They're looking at staffing levels to make sure that people aren't left on their own and isolated in stores a bit more where possible. But there's a limit to how much of that will actually have an effect. And one of the things that we've been campaigning for a couple of years now, with, again, the support of the employers, is a change to the law. We think it's time that the government in Westminster actually brought in a specific legislation that made it clear that it's a specific offence to abuse or assault a shop worker in the course of their employment, in the same way as already been done in recent years for emergency workers and for other public service workers. And in the same way, in fact, as the Scottish Government recently did in January of this year, they passed an act which has made it very clear that will happen. And it becomes a very serious offence to be to be caught doing that kind of thing.
See, I'm confused. Why doesn't it come? Yes, it is very serious. You're absolutely right. I'm agreeing with you. But why isn't it come under the general legislation of assault or abuse or all the other things?
Well, the answer is, in theory, it does. The Assault Act, I mean, it goes back to the 19th century, the assault legislation, but it's still there, and common assault is there, and more aggravated assaults are covered by that legislation. But in practice, for whatever reasons, it's not being reported when it happens as often as it should. When it does get reported, the police aren't picking it up as often as they should. And on the few occasions where it gets to court, it's not treated as seriously as it should. There's a kind of cultural problem there that needs to be changed, which is why ourselves and the employers are calling for that change in the legislation to send a very clear message that it's just not acceptable behaviour.
And what sort of support does Union of Shop and Distributive and Allied Workers offer members who potentially come to you and say, look, I'm finding my job very stressful now as a result of this increase in violence towards us and abuse towards us? I assume you have to have some sort of measures in place that means that your members are actually sort of given some sort of support. And I wondered what that was.
Yeah, where we're organised as a union, we can do an awful lot to make sure that the precautions are in place in the workplace and they're working effectively. So in those large supermarkets where we've got USDOR members and USDOR reps, we can make sure that the policies are in place to provide that kind of support. We've also could help members, if they're so badly injured in an assault that are entitled to compensation under the Criminal Injuries Compensation Scheme, we can help with that as well, although that's not very often something that happens. And we also are encouraging the employers we work with to provide things like employee assistance programs and other support for mental health issues that they might have in the workplace as a result of that kind of thing. So where we're organised, we can do a lot of that kind of stuff, but that's only where we recognise and we've got the reps in place. There are still millions of other shop workers who are exposed to this risk on a daily basis who we can't help because we can't actually directly touch them.
Let me ask you this, Doug. Do shops have the right? I'm not talking about ma and pa shops, but the big multiples. Do they have the right to ban people from coming in? I have no idea, but it's not a loaded question.
Any shop, a shop isn't public property; it's private property. So any shop can refuse entry to somebody if they choose to do so. And in fact, one of the things that our members tell us they want to see more of when we've surveyed them about this is a much more of a kind of zero tolerance attitude towards those individuals who are bullying and unpleasant in their behaviour and barring them from shops. Of course, one of the difficulties is if you bar somebody from a shop, you've then got to make that stick. And if they do try and get into the shop, there's got to be some sanction against them to stop them from doing that. And that's where, again, the change in the legislation would help, because it would mean that we could work more closely with the police and with local authorities so that the antisocial behaviour powers that they've got and the other legislative powers they've got could be used for those individuals as well.
Because the problem is, as I see it as a bystander, is you can't ask shelf stackers and cashiers and ladies on the till and blokes on the till, you can't ask them to get physically involved in, let's say, ejecting somebody. They're not trained. It's not what they're there to do, is it?
Nobody goes one step worse than that, Russ. The law is so backwards in so many sense that if they were to get involved in that, then they could be subject to criminal prosecution.
And that would be an assault. Yeah.
And that is what is so screwed up. I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't understand when it comes to defense. How on earth is it not possible to defend oneself without running the risk of being criminally prosecuted? It's bizarre.
It's a weird thing. Doug, thank you so much for coming on the show. Hugely appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
And anything we can do, because what you're doing is correct. It's the right thing.
If people want to show their support for shop workers, and I'm glad to say the vast majority of the public have been pretty good throughout the pandemic, and there's been a lot of support out there. They can go onto our website, www.usdaw.org.uk, and find out more about our campaign. And they can lobby MPs and lobby police and crime commissioners to get the police to treat it more seriously in their area as well, because those are the key people we've got to reach at the moment to try and change attitudes and change behaviours.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us here on Men's Radio Station. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you, so wish you well.
Okay. Thank you both. Bye.
Yep, thank you very much. Doug Russell, thank you very much. Good.
It's madness, isn't it? It's madness. It's counterintuitive to just basic logic. You're going to bully and be aggressive and horrible. The onus is on you.
But, to bring it back to what we do here, and I know we've got about a minute left, but just to bring it back to what we do, I actually think it goes to show there is a fundamental problem in the way that people are being brought up in this day and age, where they even think that abusing somebody is okay. That surely alarm bells must ring and say, hang on just a second, where are we going wrong? Oh, it's probably at the point of where the child is being brought up to think that that is acceptable. I don't understand how that doesn't cross people's minds. An idiot like me can work it out. Surely the clever people in power can work it out as well and do something
I
about
wonder
it.
if it just doesn't fit the agenda. Just doesn't fit the agenda. You can be reported anonymously for supposed, what they term as hate speech or saying things which people disagree with. Don't even have to give your name. And then all sorts of crap falls on that person's head. And it can go into a shop. It's nuts.
Vive la revolution. That's what I suggest. Anyway, should we do it all over again on Friday?
Why don't we do that?
Well, if you liked the guests from today, then my goodness me, bearing in mind that it's 3 hours on Friday, you'll love how absolutely jam-packed it is then. So why not join him, Ross Kane, and me, Phil Dave, Friday at 11 a.m. here on Men's Radio Station. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your comments. Goodbye, everybody.